Chris Graham here for Trailblazer RV, here to take you through a new RV orientation on this 2018 Venture RV Sonic Lite 169 VRD. We'll start right here at the front of the trailer, where you've got your propane and battery systems. It's a single 20-pound propane bottle and a single propane regulator, obviously. Anytime you open a modern propane bottle, open the valve slowly so that regulator can lock up, and open the valve all the way. That'll ensure that you don't trip the excess flow valve integrated in all new propane tanks. Behind the propane bottle is your battery. This one has an upgraded battery. This is a Group 31 12 volt deep cycle RV battery. 2 leads going to the battery, red to positive, black to negative. And as a flooded wet cell battery, this does require some maintenance. What we recommend is removing the sticker from the top of the battery, and once or twice a year checking the level of fluid in each of the cells underneath here. If the fluid is a little bit low, and especially if you can see metal plates sticking through the cells or sticking through the liquid, you'll want to top that up with some distilled water and put a good charge on the battery. We also recommend removing the battery for winter storage. Store it inside, somewhere where it's not going to freeze, and if possible, put a trickle charge on the battery once or twice over the course of the off season. Around the side of the trailer, in your pass-through storage compartment, is where you'll find your power cord. It's a 30 amp power cord, and many of the RV sites you visit will have 30 amp power. For those that don't, we supply a 15 amp park adapter to plug that into a normal 15 amp household style power outlet. The stabilizing jacks, you've got stabilizers on all 4 corners of the RV. Once you've got the RV parked in place and relatively level, you want to crank them down to be snug with the ground, but don't actually lift the RV with those. They're not designed to support the entire weight of the RV, just to add some stability. Here at your running gear, your tires are inflated to 65 psi, and that's stamped right here on the side wall of the tire. 65 psi cold, and we do recommend running them right at 65 psi. We've also torqued your lug nuts to 100 foot-pounds, and we recommend with towable RVs periodically retorquing your lug nuts as well as repacking your wheel bearings. This model has a removable center cap behind which you can access a grease zerk, and you can grease your inner and outer wheel bearings using a grease gun. As long as you add a little bit of fresh grease every year, that doesn't eliminate the need to repack your wheel bearings, but it does prolong it. So instead of repacking your wheel bearings every year, maybe you can repack your wheel bearings every 3 to 5 years, depending on how much you travel. Behind that is where you'll do your sewer dumping. We supply a new 20-foot sewer hose. It's stored in the rear bumper right now. So when you go to dump your holding tanks, attach the sewer hose onto here, and you've got 2 valves, a larger black valve and a smaller gray valve. Always dump the black first, that's your sewage. Once that has finished draining, you can close this valve and open the gray valve to dump your gray water, your sink and shower water. And then that will use the gray water to kind of flush all of the sewage contents through the hose, so there's nothing left in that hose when you disconnect it to store it back in the rear bumper. Also back here is where you'll find your furnace exhaust. Just be aware that this gets very hot when it's in use, so if you've got young kids around the RV, make sure they know not to touch that. And a couple of water connections. You've got your city water connection here. If you're camped at a site with water hookups, you can pressurize the lines in the RV right from the water source. If you're using your city water connection, we recommend using a water pressure regulator just to ensure that you don't over pressurize the lines. And also when you're hooked up to this water connection, recommend using one of those white drinking water specific garden hoses rather than just your normal garden hose. That way you won't get the plasticky garden hose taste in your drinking water. Don't confuse this connection with this connection. This is your sewer tank flush system. So when you are dumping that black holding tank, you can have a garden hose hooked up to this, preferably a different hose than what you use for your drinking water. You can hook a hose up to this and it'll spray out the inside lining of the tank, sort of spray off all of the monitor probes and keep that monitor panel reading accurately as well. Right here is where that 30 amp power cord attaches. And right here at the back corner is where you've got your hot water tank. And the hot water tank is gas electric on this model. So if you're parked at a site with electricity, you can heat your water using electricity. You'll have to turn this black rocker switch to the on position. There's also two black reset buttons out here. If the tank ever overheats, you'll have to come out here and manually reset these before you can start the tank again. This really only happens if you accidentally start up the tank with no water in it. This is also where you'll drain the tank in the winter for winter storage. You'll drain the tank by pulling the plug out of the bottom. It's a 1 1/16 inch socket to remove that plug. And you'll want to make sure to bleed the pressure off the lines using the water pressure relief valve before you pull that plug. On the end of the plug is a rod about this long. It's your anode rod. And the purpose of the anode rod is to corrode over time to preserve the inside lining of the tank from corrosion. That rod can get quite pitted and corroded looking over time, and it will need to be replaced periodically, typically every 3 or 4 years, depending on the quality of the water. Around the back of the trailer is where your spare tire is mounted. It's worth noting that the trailer doesn't come with a jack or a wheel wrench, so it's not a bad idea to check the wheel wrench that comes with your truck to make sure it fits these lug nuts, just in case you do need to change a tire sometime on the side of the road. And here on the camping side of the trailer, this is where you'll find your freshwater fill. We saw the city water connection at the other side if you want to hook up to water in a campsite. If you just want to fill your freshwater tank, you can do that from here. I recommend that you use that same drinking water specific white garden hose for that. The awning is power, and that's controlled from right inside the trailer. Right up here is where you'll find the switch for the awning. If you press and hold the out button, the awning will extend 8 feet. You don't have to extend it the full 8 feet. You can stop it at any point if there's a tree or another RV parked in the way. This is a height adjustable awning. So once you've got it fully extended, if you wanted to lower one side down, you can adjust that using these adjustments on the lower arm. Both arms are adjustable, but what we would recommend there is leaving one arm tilted lower than the other, just to ensure that the rainwater runs off where you want it to. Before you put the awning back in, you'll want to put these back up to the same height or very close to the same height. That'll ensure that the canvas rolls up straight on the roller tube. Come on inside and I'll show you a few more things. So also just inside the door is where the switch for your slide out room is, right next to the awning. If we press and hold the slide switch to extend the awning, or the slide, with this style of slide out, this is the LCI Schwintek style slide out. It's best to move the slide all the way out or all the way in. Avoid stopping it halfway if you can, because it runs on 2 different motors, and there's a potential for those motors to come out of sync if you stop it halfway. If that ever happened, you would know because the slide was coming in not perfectly straight. All you should have to do is run the slide all the way out and then all the way in again to resync those motors. Here at your stereo system, this is AM, FM, CD, DVD, USB, and Bluetooth. And you have two different speaker zones here. Zone 1 for your inside speakers, Zone 2 for your outside speakers. Especially where this is your DVD player as well. And just ensure that if you are watching a DVD on the TV, that you've got the Zone 2 speakers turned off. Otherwise, everybody else in the campground is listening to your DVD as well. The three switches just inside the door here. One for your main interior lights, one for a yard light just outside the door, and the blue backlit LED switch is for your awning lights in the roller tube of your power awning. Right down here near the floor is the power converter. This is the electrical center for the whole trailer. So if we open that up, that's where we'll find your 110 volt breakers for all of your AC circuits and your 12 volt fuses for your DC circuits. It's not a bad idea to have some spare fuses on hand. It's not uncommon in an RV to blow a fuse, and if you have some spare fuses, it won't be a big deal if you have to change one in a campground. You've got mostly 15 amp fuses on this one with a couple of 40 amp fuses. Here in the kitchen, you've got a 2-burner stovetop here. This one doesn't have a sparker to light the burners, so you'll just light the burners with a barbecue lighter. And I always recommend, anytime you've had your propane disconnected for anything, if you've replaced the bottle or refilled it or something like that, the first thing you should do when you put a new propane bottle on the trailer is come to the stove and just light both of these burners. Once you can get those burners lit, you know you've bled any air that was on the propane lines off of the system, and your automatic appliances will have no problem starting up. Your fridge, furnace, and hot water tank. On the topic of the fridge, this is a automatic gas electric nor cold fridge. And what we recommend is just always leaving it in automatic mode. When you're in automatic mode, if you're plugged into power, the fridge will always run on electricity. But if you lose power, if you blow a breaker or somebody accidentally unplugs the power cord, it'll sense that and it'll switch over to propane. You can override the automatic to only run on electricity or only run on propane, and you might find that the fridge cools a little faster on propane. Having said that, it takes several hours to cool an RV fridge down, so we recommend, if possible, get it running the day before so that it's nice and cold when you load your food into it. This one has some temperature setting, 1 being the warmest, 9 being the coldest, and I usually set it to 5 or 6 to start, but you might find you need to adjust that depending on the ambient conditions. Your microwave / convection oven needs 110 volt power to operate, and we're not plugged into power right now, so we won't be able to actually start that. The 4 things in the RV that require power hookups to work: microwave, air conditioning, TV, and power outlets. Everything else works off of battery and propane. Right here on the wall you'll find your thermostat. This controls the furnace for the RV. So if we just set the temperature up to a temperature that we're comfortable at, you hear that furnace fan come on immediately, but that fan is going to run for 15 or 20 seconds before we hear the DSI spark and the burner light up. We should be able to hear that when it happens. There you go. That ticking sound is the DSI igniter. And now that furnace burner is running, if we give it a few seconds, we would have warm air blowing right from the front of the furnace itself. Once it comes up to temperature, or you shut off the system, The exact same thing happens, only in reverse. That burner has gone out immediately, but the fan is still going to run for another 30 seconds to a minute just to go through its cycle before shutting down. With this style of thermostat, when you turn it off, you'll want to make sure and slide the slider all the way over until you hear an audible click. Otherwise, all you've done is turn it way down, and if you put the RV into storage, that furnace might be trying to come on cold evenings, running your battery down and depleting your propane. With this model, the air conditioner is just controlled right from the air conditioner unit itself. You've got two different settings, fan speed low and high, and cooling speed low and high. That's in regards to the speed of the fan, obviously, and you can run the fan independently, or you can run the whole air conditioning. If you're ever plugged into a 15 amp breaker or with a long extension cord and it's hot in the trailer, you might consider only running the fan rather than running the air conditioning itself. That air conditioner, when it kicks in, draws a lot of power. Up here at the front of the trailer, you've got an emergency escape window. This style of emergency escape window can be opened for ventilation. This one has never been opened before. There we go. So this can be propped open for ventilation. Recommend that you practice this a few times because this mechanism is a little bit tricky to use, and in an emergency situation you might have a hard time with it. So practice that a few times, just opening that vent. If it ever did need to be used for emergency exit, just use the red tab to pull the screen out, and the window hinges all the way up. There are a couple of safety features in the RV. Down here near the floor is a propane leak detector, and this one is actually propane and carbon monoxide both. So this will do three things. It will alert you to a potential propane leak. However, if you had a propane leak in the RV, you would almost certainly smell the propane before the alarm went off. It could alert you to a carbon monoxide situation, in which case you wouldn't smell anything. Or the third and most common thing that this does is it would alert you to a low voltage situation with your RV battery. The propane detector is wired into the RV's electrical system, so if the RV battery itself gets very low, it'll chirp just like a smoke detector does when its battery is reaching the end of its life. You have a smoke detector as well, right here on the ceiling. This is not wired into the RV's electrical system. It uses its own 9-volt battery, so you'll want to just check this periodically by pressing the test button, just to ensure that that battery hasn't gone dead. And then a couple of things in the bathroom to show you. For starters, anytime you're using the sewer system in the RV, you'll want to make sure and use a good potent RV toilet chemical. To add toilet chemical, just pour the chemical right into the toilet bowl. It comes in powder, liquid, or tablet form, and we sell all three here in our parts and accessories department. Once you've added chemical into the bowl, you'll want to push down halfway on the foot pedal to fill the bowl with water, and then push down the rest of the way to dump everything down into the tank. You'll want to add new chemical to the tank immediately after every time you dump that black holding tank, and you'll want to always make sure that you put some water down with the chemical. It takes some water to activate it. Also here in the bathroom is where you've got your monitor panel, so you can check the level of your battery, which is completely charged right now, fresh tank, which is completely empty, and black and gray holding tanks, also both completely empty. This is also where you'll turn on the water pump if you're not hooked up to water and you're using water from your holding tank. And two switches here for the hot water heater. The one on the right is for electricity. Remember, if you're using the water heater on electricity, that you also have to have that black switch on the outside of the tank turned to the on position. And the switch on the left for the propane. And when I turn that propane water heater switch on, the red DSI fault light comes on, showing that the tank is not running. But just like the furnace, we should hear the DSI spark and that burner light up any second. There we go. And I'm not sure if you could hear that in the video, but once that light has gone out, then you know the burner is running. If for some reason that light didn't go out, or if it went out only briefly and came back on, that's when you might go outside and check those two black reset buttons on the outside of that hot water tank. Other thing in the bathroom that's worth just pointing out is this power outlet. This is your GFI outlet. Same as the ones in the bathroom of your home with a test and reset button on it. The only difference in an RV is this is wired in series with several of your other power outlets. So if you trip that GFI, you'll lose power at all of your power outlets. If you're ever plugged into power and wondering why your outlets don't work, come into the bathroom, press the reset button, everything should go back to normal. And I think for the most part that covers it. Hopefully you've learned something about the 2018 Sonic Lite 169 VRD. If you ever have any questions, you can always get a hold of us here at Trailblazer, or you can check our website, trailblazerrv.com. Thanks for watching.